Yeah, I mean, I think what happens with a famous band is that, especially Paul, because he was really the famous person in that band. My credentials were that I'd been in a semi-famous band anyway, who went on to be more famous after, but at that time, so it was Paul really was the centre of attention. And, you know, he was like too famous almost to go on the road too much, right? You know, we spent more time in the studio than we did on the road. And it's kind of hard. You get into studio mode, you know, and then you run out of like energy. Whereas when you're doing the both, you've got the energy and then you've got the feedback is what you get on the road. You get the feedback. You know exactly where you stand. In the studio, it becomes a little bit self-indulgent, and you're trying things, and you don't really know what the reaction is going to be. It's just all off. It's coming from you and your confidence, you know. It's just like painting a picture or something, you know, but you're making it up yourself, right? You've got the technique, but you're not copying anything, you know. So, but when you're on the road, you're getting such a feedback that you've already got. Oh, we know what the audience is going to think about this. Do you get where I'm going? But you have to. I think you have to have both those elements in your experience, you know, to get a good album. Because you can go just the studio route, and with Paul, we spent a lot of time in the studio, a lot of time, and not as much time on the road. So there's a little bit of an imbalance there. And I think what comes from, you know, having the balance is, to me, you know, better albums or more. I don't know. We experimented more in the studio, and maybe we didn't have to. Maybe, and as a result of that, we got a lot of outtakes we didn't use. So we'd make more music than we needed for the album, you know. And then later, maybe we mess around with the outtakes. I don't know, or they'd come out as hot hit cold cuts. That was another one. But you know, instead of, like, for example, say Pink Floyd, you know. They go and they learn their song, they learn the thing as a show. Then they go in the studio, they learn it as a concept. They go in the studio and they learn, you know, they make it into an album which has ups and downs, because the first song is compared to the second one, you know, and it's going from light and shade and slow to fast and different keys and all that sort of thing. You've got a blueprint. Whereas we didn't have so much of a blueprint. We just went in there with a few ideas, mostly Paul's, I might say, you know, because him being the prominent writer, that's the situation. So it was kind of his ideas, bouncing them off me, and then me coming up with bits to add to them, you know. Eventually he would say to me, have you got any songs? Have you got any ideas? And then we would take my ideas and he would add to them. He was always trying to incorporate the rest of the band into more of a, you know, leader position, you know. But because of the focus on him all the time and the pressure on him, I suppose he couldn't help it, you know, coming up with new ideas all the time. Well, the Paul McCartney and Wings basically came from the promoters, you know, and I know this for a fact, because he wanted it to just be Wings. You know, the thing about Paul is he is who he is, but he sometimes, you know, knows that can be a little bit too much pressure on him, and he's trying to move it across to everyone else. It's like he's used to being in a band, for Christ's sake, like we all are, and not a front man. So he wanted it to be Wings, but the promoters, are people going to come? You know, it's the old story. You put his name up there, they're all going to turn up. So I mean, that's the way it goes. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't know whether it was advertised as Paul McCartney and Wings after a while. I never used to see Paul McCartney. I'd see it, like, you know, well, I see it these days on YouTube and stuff. But I mean, in those days, all I ever saw outside was Wings, you know. I mean, I never really thought of it that way, but I do not. And in the early days, I think they were trying to promote it as Paul McCartney and Wings because nobody knew who Wings were. You know, it's like a lot of people. I mean, I'm not kidding now. A lot of people didn't know Paul McCartney, especially the young people, was in the Beatles. You know, they say, "Oh, you were in the Beatles as well? Wow, it's so funny." All that stuff.